We live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth, a network of courage, a network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, Aura the Informationalist.
Just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
My aura is a network full of awareness and gifts like Aura, the informationalist.
How you doing?
Yes, peace and greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world. You're now tuned in to the Network of Awareness podcast radio show. I'm the owner and founder, or the informationalist, and your host for this Truth Seeker Series episode, where I'm going to be interviewing Adam Hart. And today's episode is putting nature back in human nature. And before we actually have Adam come on, let's give you a brief introduction to who Adam is. And brothers and sisters, this brother's going to provide great substance. And as you know, as my guests from Canada always do. So to all my Canadians, we got one of your very own. And Adam is an international speaker. He's a best-selling author whose mission is to help busy parents transform their quality of life and develop deeply connected relationships with their partners and children. He also focuses on the central nervous system regulation, which he's going to go really deep into and how he came to this understanding. Also, energetic attraction and natural holistic wellness practices. Adam leads a group that is based on coaching program with his 6-step Unleash Your Energy process for living and aligned to your best version of yourself. So, without further ado, let's bring Adam on to the show.
Yeah, hello.
All right. Hey, welcome to the show, brother. Really appreciate you coming on to the show, Adam. And let's get right into it, right? Because you and I have a lot to discuss in regards to really fulfilling your potential and working towards becoming the best version of yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, when I first spoke with you, you do rock climbing, and you found out something from rock climbing that really helped you in regards of how to control your mind and body and to put things into sync. Can you discuss that and kind of let the listeners know what that's all about?
Yeah. I mean, there's an element of I think what a lot of us experience in our lives where we feel kind of trapped or stuck or uncertain. And we know that things aren't necessarily the best in terms of what's happening around us. And you can think of on a global scale, but then in your own home. And I spent a lot of my time, especially in my youth and into my 20s, trying to fix things. Like, why am I feeling so broken? Why am I not getting in tune with a level of health that I feel like I should have access to, but yet I keep tripping myself up in some way. And every time I try to figure out a way out, the structures of society and what we keep being told are the ways to get healthy, what I like to call these cultural norms, things we think are normal that really aren't normal for our natural biology, but we assume they are. And, I kept relying on the same things, like a diet, like a fitness program, like, hey, you should meditate more, Adam. And obviously we'll dive deep in all these, but not to say that those are wrong, but they just weren't supporting me to feel as healthy as I wanted to feel. And rock climbing, when I discovered rock climbing, it came to me as kind of a rock bottom moment, source of light. And what I didn't know at the time, what it was providing me was access to feeling present, access to understanding what does it actually biologically feel like to be here in this moment, connected to my mental energy in a way where I could think better and make smarter choices, and physically be stronger and more in tune with my natural human instincts. And climbing was the access to that. And I've been living aligned to that ability, my own mental, physical abilities for the past 20 years because of that discovery.
Now, you were labeled as ADHD when you were younger. What age were you labeled with that?
Yeah, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was medicated by the age of 13, 14. I was put on medication. Also diagnosed as learning disabled and put in a separate classroom growing up. And yeah.
See, it's unfortunate because this is something I've discussed in the past on my show about how a lot of children throughout the world, especially in Western civilization, due to Big Pharma's influence in the world, a lot of times there's this diagnosis that they give kids that is very inaccurate. And ADHD is definitely one of those diagnoses. And then putting the children, like they did to you, on these medications, it's very detrimental to the well-being of a child. And what I really appreciate nowadays is that this type of information, as well as on this platform, is being exposed more and more, because we really need to expose Big Pharma for what they really are. Because the pharmaceutical industry is very destructive to the human nature, to the human family. Yeah. And I think slowly but surely, people are starting to come back to holistic ways of living, of how we used to live before. But can you talk about how that experience was? And I'm glad that you broke free from that, because unfortunately, there's many kids that when they get put on pharmaceutical drugs at a young age, they wind up becoming drug addicts, and they wind up not developing healthy ways of maturing and becoming adults, to the point where they become dependent on the drug. And if they feel like they don't have the drug, then they don't feel adequate. They feel like they can't operate in society. I actually have people like, I had friends like that were just like that. But if you could let the listeners know about what that experience was like and everything that was involved in there.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of pieces involved in this, and there's the two sides. So one is the societal side, the ways that we are currently experiencing the way that life comes at us. And when you're a young child, and in my example, I had a childhood. It wasn't the worst childhood, but definitely had a lot of moments of stress where I became very reactive to the stressors in my life. And when I tried to cope with those stressors, I turned to sugar as my dominant source of trying to feel better. And so if we understand the mechanisms of what sugar does to you biologically, well, yeah, it's going to trigger a stress response that kind of starts this looping pattern of becoming impulsive and and not really being able to be attentive. And then you get put into a school system that doesn't promote creativity and really just focuses on throwing you into a certain channel of this is how you're supposed to learn. This is, this is the experience you're supposed to have in terms of gaining knowledge. And that perpetuated my stress. Now, I didn't know at the time what my own biology was doing with that, but my brain, and like all of our brains, it's a survival organ. And so it starts to learn in terms of the patterns of stress that we have. The brain likes the stress. It wants the adrenaline from the fight or flight stress response. And so as a child, you grow up and you have these stressful moments. If you don't know how to mitigate the brain's use of that stress, you're going to get locked into these patterned ways of thinking about yourself, right? The brain knows, okay, so if I can give Adam some thoughts about self-esteem, self-worth, shame, and guilt, that I'm going to trigger to those over and over again, which is going to give the brain the adrenaline it wants and the dopamine from the addictive habits that I had as a child, which most of that for most of our kids is screens and sugar. And so then you get these diagnoses like ADHD, but yet so much of it has to do with our own biology and the fact that who's nourishing the brain of these children? Who's teaching the children to teach their own brain to not feed off of this stress response, but to have more peace and calm so that the child can learn how to live with more peace and calm. And this is where the nature side of things come in, this holistic getting back to nature. I didn't know that was going to be an access point for me until I got so broken into my 20s.
Quick question. Do you have the microphone on your desk?
I do.
Okay, because I was going to ask you if you could just keep it still because it's coming in on the audio.
Yeah.
And it's creating some distortion sound.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. How's that sound now?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right. Yeah. And so, but there's a level of, I think, where a lot of parents who are putting their kids on the pharmaceutical medications that don't realize that a lot of it has to do with how they support their kids to feel calm and peaceful. And with modern society, the way it is and the amount of reactivity that's out in our society these days, it's tough as a parent to help support your child to feel at peace, to feel calm. And so most of our younger generation right now is very much living a revved up and anxious life. And of course, what's a parent to do if they don't have the right tools to support their kids? Well, they turn to medication as one of the main ways to do that, especially when a caregiver like your main physician diagnoses you as ADHD. Well, again, then you're relying on what they're saying and what the system's telling you. But there's another way to start to approach this, and for me, it took me a lot of self-reflection and self-exploration to understand my own relationship with ADHD and how I can manage it through holistic means, but it's not what you're going to hear from the mainstream.
So how did you overcome the shift? What was that shift that you overcame this diagnosis of ADHD? What happened to you, or what did you actually do to change things?
Yeah. Well, it came to me through climbing. When I started to rock climb, all of a sudden there was this peace that came over me and this ability to feel connected to my thoughts in a way that I never was able to before. I had a pretty dark moment of depression and anxiety in my early 20s from not being able to support my own wellness in this way. And when I started to climb, all of a sudden I realized, wow, when I'm climbing, I'm just here right now. I'm peaceful. I'm calm. I'm doing something that's allowing me to escape these dark thoughts that have kind of run my life for so long, and lots of different medications that I was put on to help try and fix what I was experiencing. And from climbing, it started to take over my life because it was the only place that I felt, somewhat happy and somewhat fulfilled. And as I dove deeper into rock climbing and left my very busy city-based life, which is, I grew up in Toronto. I ended up with occupational burnout in my mid-20s and said, okay, well, climbing is making me feel better. It's the only thing that's making me feel better. Let's just start to pursue this. And so I moved out of Toronto. I moved to a small town on the west coast of Canada, a little town called Golden in British Columbia. And I started to train to become a rock climbing guide. I was like, okay, well, this is going to be my profession now. I'm going to make this my thing. And so in the pursuit of climbing at that level, I started to realize that in order to be efficient at this sport and actually turn this into something I can do full time. I had to get better at it. But what I was doing at the same time that I was training to get stronger was I started to realize that I was actually optimizing my nervous system. And I was able to start to recognize that I was starting to regulate my nervous system in a way that nobody told me I was able to do. And these were in the moments that I was feeling anxious. Anxiety is such a dominant experience for us right now. And we don't even realize that most of our lives, we're living in a fight or flight version of life.
Absolutely.
Right. And so all of a sudden I'm here and I'm realizing, wow, I'm spending hours and hours and hours and days and days and days, weeks and months training my own fight or flight nervous system response to reset itself. Reset. In the moments I'm feeling anxious, because that's a real fight or flight moment. Rock climbing, if you don't reset your stress response, you could die. But what I recognized in that was, wow, this feeling I'm getting. So I'd be up hundreds of feet up the side of a mountain, and I'd have my mind go into this thought process of, ooh, you're really high up here. How are you going to control this? You're going to, you can't mess this up. Started trying to loop thoughts to get me to be anxious. And again, you can't let that happen. Otherwise you could have a problem. So I was learning how to reset it in those moments and realize that, wait a minute. So this feeling of anxiety that I'm getting, that I'm now able to reset, it's the same anxiety feeling that I used to get as a kid, but nobody gave me the tools to reset then. So I was like, okay, well, if I can reset this while I'm climbing, which is a real fight or flight scenario, what if I started to do it in the other areas that I feel anxious that aren't really fight or flight, but that's what life is throwing at us as our experience. And so I realized, wow, when I'm in traffic, I have a lot of road rage. Why don't I try this when I'm in traffic? Okay. Started to do the same thing that I was doing climbing, but doing it when I was in traffic. All of a sudden my road rage, it was dissipated immediately from being able to reset my own stress response in the moments it was happening. I'd be with my kids and they'd get loud and start fighting with each other, and boom, my stress response would kick in, and I'd be like, oh, no, wait a minute. I can reset this. I know how to reset this in the moment. And that changed everything for me, and realized pretty quick that there was something in our natural biology that most of us have not been taught how to tune into, which is the beauty of our nervous system, which is our superpowers. Society has us locked into a fight or flight response, which diminishes our critical thought, which is also a large part of why the systems are as broken as they are, because we, as the citizens of the systems, don't have critical thought because we're so revved up on anxiety that we don't even know how to nourish ourselves in a way where we can be in our parasympathetic, the opposite to the fight or flight, the rest and digest state. And so as I learned to cultivate a deeper relationship with my rest and digest nervous system state, it gave me back my critical thought and made me a much better contributor to myself, my family, my community, and the world. And the long story short on that is my belief in terms of the need for us as individuals to rise up has everything to do with our stress response and our ability to live with more critical thought.
Wow, you hit on a lot of great points there. And one thing I appreciate about what you're doing, Adam, is that you're teaching this to your children and you're teaching this to other parents, because I can tell you, based on the information you've provided already, it just brought me back to being in New York City and growing up in the toxicity that I grew up in, and having a parent, being my mother, where I grew up anxious. My whole childhood was built off of anxiety. And I'm still at 45 years old, still trying to manage that. The beautiful thing is that spiritually, I was blessed with the understanding of critical thought and understanding the importance of it. It's one of the reasons why I'm one of the only people in my family. Actually, I'm the last person in my family, to be honest with you, especially with my siblings, that is not on any pharmaceutical drugs and never has been. Have I done drugs? Absolutely, but not pharmaceutical drugs. I've done drugs for recreation, and of course for coping mechanisms too. Alcohol was part of it, but not a big deal. It was more marijuana and other types of drugs that I tried out, and some became a habit. But that anxiety thing is such a big problem nowadays more than ever, because of a lot of our generation, the so-called X generation, and the way we raised our kids. And now you're starting to see these millennials that were raised by us. that the anxiety that was passed on to us by our parents and the way we grew up, because growing up, especially, it's not even just, the anxiety that a lot of parents give their children, no matter what the environment is. When you grow up in the ghetto or in those environments where there's a lot of hostility, because growing up in the Bronx, there's a lot of hostility. Mm-hmm. Just, always having to watch your back, people scheming on you. And there's always this tension that your parents have from being stressed out. It's usually coming from money and all these other things. And I can remember how tense it was where I had a parent that didn't feel comfortable when things were going well. So it's almost like they had to find something wrong to complain about so that there could be tension. And that tension became the norm. And that's what built my anxiety. Now, in my older years, I still battle with dealing with family. You know what I mean? Because of that tension. But I know what peace looks like. And what I wanted to say to you is that that's what you're doing is so important, because one thing that I've come to realize, especially since I've hit my 40s, is that I can't be consumed with any outcomes. That's alleviated a lot of anxiety, where it's like I'm so focused on the outcome of doing something. So if I take that away and I just focus on being present and let the outcomes be whatever they may be, like that saying, tell God what your plans are and God's going to laugh at you, because, the only plan is the Most High's plan for us being the creation. So I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, because the type of work that you're doing in these days and times, I'm talking about 2023, it's life-saving, because with everything that's transpired just in the last several years, we live in a world and in societies that have no critical thought whatsoever. It's a very small population of people in the whole entire, countries that are, especially here in Western civilization, that have critical thought. Not a lot of people do. And the pandemic revealed that for exactly what it is. The pandemic showed that, hey, we don't have critical thought here. Critical thought is damn near extinct. So with that being said, the question I wanted to ask is, what was the biggest thing that you came to an epiphany to that allowed you to take a whole different course besides the rock climbing, which you described? Was there any particular moment where you knew that nothing was ever going to be the same in your life, how it was? Yeah. Do you have a moment that ever that happened to you like that?
Yeah. And I appreciate what you just shared. And in terms of the letting go of outcome, we should dive into that at some point, because that's a really critical part to this process.
Right.
When I work with my clients, and most of my clients, again, they're busy parents, and I love working with parents because I think it's so important that parents have the ability to create a calm environment for their children to grow up in, because that's how the children feel safe. It's from their nervous system energy, not the words you say. It's how are you holding your stress response in this moment that gives a child a sense of safety. My big moment, it did come from a climbing experience where I really wasn't sure if I was about to survive a very particular moment in that. And the number one, I guess, aha or main point to get across that I discovered is how simple it can be to start to tune into our own daily fulfillment. And I know that might sound like a lot, because depending on your own life situation, as we get older and enter adulthood, we have a lot of responsibilities. We have our relationships, our finances, our careers, or work, or our health. And the brain starts to learn which ones of those are causing a lot of stress. And it starts to create thoughts. On average, we have 70,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. And if the brain is learning which ones of those thoughts we react to, we become a slave to those thoughts, and we self-identify as that's who we are. I'm in debt all the time, and how am I ever going to get out of debt? Or, man, my health has really turned to crap, and I got to fix it. And this is the whole idea of now I got to change the outcome. I got to figure this out. I got to fix this. And the big aha for me was recognizing that there is nothing that needs to be fixed. The system loves us to try and chase things to fix. The brain loves us focused on needing to fix things because it feeds that stress response. And again, the brain it's a beautiful organ, but it acts just like a child who's got a bag of candy, and you take the bag of candy away. way. It's going to get pissed off. Well, right now, the brain loves feeding off of your hormones. It loves feeding off of your adrenaline and your cortisol based off of you chasing these outcomes. And when we learn to nourish the brain in a way that has more of a holistic connection, not another fitness program, another diet, which is just going to feed it more and more, you start to realize that you can create more space to live in presence. And so my big discovery was actually a particular breath practice that I took from climbing, that I started, like I mentioned, bringing it into every moment of my life. And so, when I work with my clients, I walk them through a 6-step process. And just so anybody here who resonates with any of this, I do have these 6 steps as a PDF outline for anybody who wants access to them. All right. You can grab that off my website, which, if you're okay with me sharing that, I can share the website with everybody.
Well, all your information is going to be in the description page as it is now. But great. Once the episode finishes, people will have that there for, anytime they click on this episode, whether it be audio or visual. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, because for those who resonate with this, then you're going to want to grab it, because there's a little more detail on this. But the breath practice itself is one that you can do in the moments of your life that you notice your brain is trying to create disruption. It's trying to tell you something about your life that you actually don't want to associate with anymore. You can reset it in that same moment to begin to give yourself some space to start to do what is the opposite of that, right? So we know that we get stuck in these thoughts of, I got to fix this, I got to fix that, I got to figure this out, I got to figure, and we're very familiar with the idea of goal setting, and a lot of this is just creating fuel for disruption. And when we learn to reset our own stress response in these moments, we then have an opportunity to start to connect with how we do want to feel. And I think that's the idea of the holistic part of this, the natural connection to who we're meant to be and how we're meant to live. In modern society, we're so stuck in fear response and reactivity and anxiety that very rarely do we get time and space to connect with what we do want, in terms of how do I want to feel in my life versus what am I now trying to fix? And the fixing energy manifests on itself. And so if we can start to train the nervous system to be in that rest and digest state, you can start to play with your energy in a way where you get to choose to explore how you want to feel as the alternative. But most of us will never get there. We don't even know that this is something we can train into our own nervous system to be able to hold space to have an experience around.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you share that, because it's something that we have to always be mindful of, is those situations that we get put in where we can become somewhat stagnant or depressed or feeling like we're not amounting to anything, those feelings of self-doubt, which leads me to the next topic of discussion. And if you want to dig deeper into the whole thing that I brought up about outcomes, feel free to do so.
Yeah.
But also what I wanted to discuss with you is this whole energy and frequency thing that's so important. Because I just had a guest by the name of Bill Heinrich on, and he said something to me that was so profound and so eye-opening to me that it was just like, I still think about it to this day, where let me see if I can remember exactly how he said it, but he was saying, like, don't make decisions. Don't make decisions, because decisions lead you to disappointment. And it also leads to that anxiety. He said, make choices. We just make choices in life. And I've really been meditating on that a lot. And ever since I've been meditating on that, it's like I have this whole different view now of how I'm going to be approaching certain things in my life moving forward, because I was becoming so driven to do certain things and kind of, it was somewhat goal orientated, but it was like this really strong drive I have, which I still do. But what I've realized is that I can still have that strong drive without having to set goals and outcomes of having certain things happen by a certain time.
Yeah.
And just have them happen when it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
And that's, I look at that, I correlate that with having faith in that which we cannot see, like the scriptures talks about.
Yeah.
And it's really doing a number on me as we speak. Like, this just started happening to me. So as I'm having this discussion with you, it makes me realize how there's this divine intervention of how things happen when you let go and you just become present.
It's a hard one. It's a hard, like, having faith is so difficult because modern society has us locked in these patterns of needing to try and control everything.
Yes.
Right. And then there's so much fear-based media, and, it locks our own biology into these patterns that deny us the beauty of what's possible in presence. We just don't even understand it as a place that we can live from. So my understanding of quantum physics, and this came from my ability to train my own nervous system into a dominant state of fight or flight. So if we think in terms of a percentage, let's take 100% and think, okay, well, where do the majority of us, especially in North America, where do we live? And the majority of us live in probably 80% fight or flight. We don't even realize it, but so much of our day is fight or flight driven. That has a frequency to it, that has an emotional frequency. The emotional frequency is based off of your interaction with that state. So if you have 70,000 thoughts a day, these thoughts are creating emotion based off of how you're interacting with them. Now, the other 20% is that peaceful, calm state. And we know we get access to it once in a while. We know it feels nice once in a while, but we don't really know how to cultivate more of that into our lives. The key is, if you can start to understand how to do that, how do you start to flip the switch so that now you get to be at what I call the magic number, 51% calm, rest and digest, parasympathetic state. You're now above the drowning mark. You can start to cultivate a deeper surrender into this idea of, okay, well, I can actually let go of the need to control everything and have more faith in the fact that I can be aligned with more purpose, more passion, more fulfillment. The key is, how do you get there, and how do you hold that space? And my understanding of it, and the key to that, is recognizing that everything that's coming to you is coming to you based off of the frequency of your own emotions. How you are feeling is how you are attracting. Okay, so how does that work? Well, the frequency comes from your nervous system. Not too many people know that, but it's a reality. That's the truth. It comes from your nervous system, and whatever we can't see it. So like we say, well, if you can't see it, how do you put everything, all your belief behind it? Well, because you start to recognize pretty quick that whatever emotion you're holding is what you're attracting more of. And so when you pull back for a moment and you look at the themes of your life, your health, your relationships, your finance, and your career and your work, you're going to realize that there's a similar emotional frequency to all those. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, they all kind of feel a little bit sticky, a little bit uncertain, a little bit anxious, a little bit fearful, a little bit, I'm trying to fix them all. Okay, well, that's because your nervous system is vibrating that emotional frequency. The only way out is to shift the frequency, shift the emotion. How do you do that? Well, you have to learn to reset your own nervous system. In the moments of life that your brain is trying to create thoughts that you're reacting to, that's your access. As soon as you notice, oh my God, my thoughts are telling me about my partner and how much I should resent them for, not loving me the way I want them to love me, or communicating the way I want to communicate, or, whatever life scenario your brain is now using these thoughts to trip you up, you have to teach your brain that that's not the truth, that you're actually okay just the way you are right now. But now you also get the chance to play with, how do I want this to feel? What's the emotion I rather have? And that's when you notice really quick that you start to attract more of that emotion into your life. That's a short answer.
Well, you could give a long answer if you want, but it also stems from fear, right? Fear is a big problem. And the powers that shouldn't be know it all too well. And that's why most people in that fight or flight mode are in fight or flight mode, because of fear. And something for my personal experience is that I've gotten rid of fear, not completely, but the majority of it that used to affect my life, I got rid of it. Yeah. Like, even I haven't driven a car technically in 1 year, in just about a year. It's been a year's time since I haven't driven. So when you talked about that road rage that you had, it took it right out, right? Because I'm not driving. So I either take an Uber or I have a scooter. And my family was like, because, I was the guy that I've been driving since I was like 16, 17 years old, nonstop. Driving has always been a part of my life. I was Uber for friends before Uber even existed. Okay. So I have a lot of driving hours under my belt. I came to a point, for a number of reasons, but I'll tell you one, that I just got tired of driving. I'm like, driving in Florida is building a lot of tension in me, because I'm getting upset every day from somebody cutting me off or not putting their signal light on, and getting into these interactions where I'm flipping somebody off, or somebody's flipping me, or calling me all these making derogatory comments to me and all this other stuff. And I made that decision with no fear. Like, it was like, everybody's like, well, what are you going to do without a car? But it's like, same thing I've been doing, living my life. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that happen in that. It was getting desensitized from having to fit into the status quo way of doing things. And it's really helped me a lot in understanding that you don't have to live your life a specific way according to man's way of, or what other people think you should be doing.
Yeah.
And that has freed me up so much, because not driving's not only brought me peace of mind from not having that road rage, but riding a scooter around town has brought me a lot of fulfillment.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go do it a little bit later. Sometimes I just go riding just for the experience.
Yeah.
And having the wind blow in my face or whatever. And there's people that look at me and they wave hi. And then there's other people that look at me and it's like, look at this cornball. Look at this grown ass man riding his scooter. And it's like, I laugh because even when I tell some of my friends back home, back from New York, they've come at first. It was like they looked at me like I was crazy, but now that it's been about a year's time, everybody's kind of like embraced it now. It's like this cool, people be like, oh, I could see you riding your scooter. But I put myself in the mindset that I don't care what people think. Yeah. It's all about being present, being fulfilled with what I'm doing with my life. I wasn't born to impress other people.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I want to impress upon people that they can only be free to be who they truly are when they try to impress the very creation that they came from by utilizing the gifts and the abilities that they were given to be the best version of themselves.
Love it. I love it. And the beauty of that is knowing that there's a way to tune into that on a much deeper level than we are right now. And, we know that there's something at play that's denying us access to that. And that's because our modern leadership understands how the beautiful organ that is our brain, they know how it operates. And so they know that by putting you in certain scenarios, your own brain is going to sabotage your ability to own this moment and to own fulfillment as your place to live. And so they've set up things in certain ways that disrupt your ability to see your full power. And, you think in terms of driving as an example, well, major city centers that are so congested and people are stuck in their cars, your brain is learning from the stress of that. And then you look at all the other people stuck in the same traffic jam. Well, nobody's creating presence in that moment. Everyone's just stuck in their own heads being triggered all the time. And so that manifests on itself. And that then, turns into where you go next with that energy and where you go next with that energy. And, now you start to look at society as a whole and how is it all set up? It's a lot of it is set up for us to not live presently, to live in our past, to live in the future. And then we become mass consumers in a level that you don't even recognize that you're taking these kinds of actions that are contributing to the problem. And it's like, okay, well, how do I now start to become part of the solution? And I appreciate that, you stop driving as an important step. I love to share with my clients, life has to be your classroom. You have to look at the areas of your life that you're feeling triggered and recognize what's at play here. When you're feeling triggered, it's not a matter of, and I'm not suggesting this is what you did, but it's not that you want to run away from it. You want to use that trigger as a source of training. You want to now learn to train your nervous system to not react to that. Because as much as we know that there's lots in modern society that's disrupting us, this is another example, the phone.
Yeah.
I love my phone. I don't want to get rid of it, but we have lost the ability to adapt to the amount of stress that our mind and bodies are put under in modern society. And so we're not going to run off and live in caves. That's not the point. But the point is, well, how can I start to live with all these beautiful modern things, but do it in a way where I have peace of mind? I have the ability to contribute to the greater good of things. And that for me only comes from an internal experience of nourishing your own relationship between your brain and your nervous system. The more you operate how your brain functions versus your brain triggering you into reactivity all the time, then you have the choice to feel more aligned to being fulfilled, to being in that place of fully surrendering to what is. And that's a hard place to get to, but it's the most beautiful place to live.
Absolutely. There's you got a publishing deal, right? In regards to food. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I got, this is my book here, The Power of Food. Oh, blurred.
Yeah, it's a little blurred. If you probably put it to where your face is, people can see it.
Yeah,
Power of Food. And I'm glad we're talking about this because this right here,
yeah,
this is probably one of the most important things that people need to understand in regards to being at a high frequency and having the body operate at an optimal level. Not just the body, but also the brain as well.
Well, and that's it. The foundation of our wellness comes from our nervous system. Nourishing it, getting into a good place to where you live in your parasympathetic most of your days. That takes something. But once you've got that, and that, again, when I work with my clients, we get you to that position where you understand that relatively quickly and how to optimize that place to live from. But then after you've got that going, well, now you can look at all these beautiful areas of wellness, the holistic areas like your sleep, your fitness, nutrition, and your relationships around you. And you start to look at those in terms of, okay, I'm not trying to fix anything now. Now I'm just using these to further strengthen my ability to live as powerfully as I can live. Present. And so nutrition became one of those for me as a manifestation. When I started to do all the rock climbing and started to nourish my mind and my body the way I was, the next step that showed up was, oh, wow, okay, so I'm a fast food eater and a junk food eater and still addicted to sugar, pre-diabetic. I was pre-diabetic in my mid-20s. And all of a sudden now here I am climbing and feeling better and nutrition shows up into my world. I'm like, whoa, all of a sudden I'm cooking stuff I've never cooked before. Okay, this is interesting. This feels really good. And I started to really enjoy the process of learning new ingredients and trying to prepare them in my own kitchen in a way where, I felt self-empowered. And then I started to share what I was doing with my friends and they started to tell me, wow, this stuff is really amazing. You're really good at this. And so there was an element of the nutrition that was fulfilling my need to be liked, my self-esteem, my self-worth, that I grew up having so many thoughts around and getting knocked down by my own mind for so long that the praise I was getting from nutrition drove me into diving all in on nutrition once I discovered it. And particularly, being pre-diabetic and having a lot of blood sugar issues, I wanted to see if I can learn to stabilize my own blood sugar. And the book, The Power of Food, came from my discovery of how I was able to convert my sugar addiction into a powerful source of love. And as I gained more presence with food and more deep connection to preparing food, I realized, wow, so I feel the energy of this. I'm very present in my experience with food now that I never was growing up. And I recognized, okay, so when I choose to make a recipe, I actually have to go to the grocery store, grab all the ingredients, come back, prep it all up, then actually get to consume it or share it. Then I have to do a whole cleaning process. And I realized that 3-4 hours is a very powerful act of self-love. The entire time I'm immersed in my presence with it, not reactivity to it, not, oh my God, I have to cook and I have to do.
Yes.
It became a powerful source. Right. And I realized really quick, I was like, this is a manifestation. Like I know because I'm learning to feel happier and feel more fulfilled and know how my parasympathetic nervous system works. My emotional frequency changed. And then that's where nutrition all of a sudden came in and it was matching that emotion. I was feeling happy about food for the first time in my life and recognized that my cravings for sugar started to disappear. And it's not about perfection and it wasn't all at once. And I still love cookies. I still enjoy to eat cookies. But there was an energy to it that I felt so inspired by my own interaction with food now that I realized I could do this in every area of my life. I could probably do this with my sleep. I can do this with my fitness. And it just kept going and going. But that's where the book came from. My passion for learning how to prep food in creative ways and fun ways led to getting a North American deal for this book, The Power of Food. And it's got over 100 plant-based recipes. And I'm not plant-based, but I learned how to start to add more plants into my diet so it could complement all the meat-based foods that I was eating in a way where I was rounding out my nutritional intake.
Well, I definitely got to get that book because I want to switch to a plant-based diet because I've come to love vegetables in a way like never before. I had Brussels sprouts yesterday, and let me tell you, I love Brussels sprouts. That's my new favorite thing to eat. It's like, I feel like I can eat Brussels sprouts every single day, literally.
Well, it's cool. On the nutrition front, I started to, all of a sudden, I'd walk around the grocery store and I could, as long as I was being present and not just reactive, not just grabbing things and grabbing and going and rushing through and, oh my God, I got to get groceries done so I can then go do this. And then I got to go do that. And then I got, always living one step ahead. It's like, if I was present, I could feel, it's like intuition. All of a sudden there's that gut feeling of what my body wanted. What does it need? And as long as I did it in a present way, my basket or my buggy became full of the things that I knew would nourish me. And, again, there's a faith piece in that, being on all the diets that I was told to be on in my past and all of them leading me to feeling frustrated and guilty and feeding the stress response. This was a whole other way for me to experience food. And it just felt so natural. It felt real, holistic, it's easy. It just made sense.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It becomes very easy. You start to realize that the key to life is simplicity. Life is not complicated, but fear and control of the fear, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're in a state of fear. So we think that the only way to overcome the fear is to become more in control of things so that we can get rid of the fear. A lot of times it's being in control of money and how to make it, being in control of relationships and how they're supposed to go. And you wind up getting a wake-up call too, especially with relationships where it's like you can't control another human being. You're not going to get any positive outcome like that. But when you're actually present and just embracing that person for who they are, good and bad, you get to see the beauty of what life is supposed to be about and how you're supposed to be experiencing it. And that's why when I named this network of awareness really is everything. It's like if you're aware, you become more prepared for living a more fulfilling life. But it's the things that you're not aware of that can really do a lot of damage to you. And that's where, in my opinion, that's where the ego is. The ego is very detrimental if it's not kept in its proper place as being aware that it's actually there. It's the people that are not aware that the ego's there, that they run amok in this world. Those are the people that cause a lot of chaos and tension. And that's most of society. Like what you're describing right now and talking about on this broadcast it's an anomaly in the world. It's not something that's very common, but I truly believe that the more we have these discussions and the more we put in the work to be the examples of this truth, the more this truth is going to come to the light when it comes to the light in any particular situation, it can't be denied. But when it starts to come to the light in masses, that's when you're going to see a lot of things change in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that day is coming, is drawing near and near as things get worse and worse. So do you want to talk more about this whole thing that you said you wanted to dig into when I had brought up about the, what was it?
The outcome.
The whole living your life not focused on outcomes. Do you want to talk more about that?
Well, I think that leads back also to the discussion of faith. There's so much of how I was brought up, and I know in a lot of the different societal settings, it's just a narrative that we hear over and over and over again of, whether it's again that idea of goal setting or achievement of some kind, and social media has only made this so much more disruptive for youth and for adults. Everything's about the latest, greatest thing. And we're all looking at other people's lives, and, there's a real danger to that. And we know there's a real danger to that in terms of, coveting somebody else or something else's experience. And then we, again, it's just, we lose the connection to our own fulfillment or our own potential fulfillment when we're always stuck in that constant chase. And again, it's this, I love trying to bring it back to the simplicity of this. And, talking about the ego, I was never told that I could work with my own brain. Okay. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, Adam. You're talking about the brain a lot. Well, it's such an important aspect to this discussion. And for more and more of us to start to break free, and I'm recognizing that has that same energy of getting somewhere. But as an individual, we really want to start to cultivate a relationship with what it feels like to feel free, what it feels like to feel powerful, what it feels like to feel purposeful, fulfilled. And there's only one place that exists. It doesn't exist in the future. It doesn't exist in the past. It only exists in the present moment. But that's easy to hear. You're like, oh, okay, well, I hear that a lot. Presence. Yeah, but presence is an actual biological state. It's a state you can train into your life experience, but you're up against it because the brain doesn't want you to know how to cultivate a relationship with presence. Because when you go to a place of presence, you automatically change how your body performs. Presence, dominated by the parasympathetic nervous system state, is a place of peace and calm. It's also a place where you have less inflammatory response, better hormonal balance, better mitochondrial energy, the energy of your cells, better digestion. The brain doesn't like that. The brain wants you to be in a state of distress because in that moment, it gets the adrenaline and the cortisol from your response to life, from your need to chase an outcome. So it's all like, for me, it's the ego, yes, but it's just recognizing that the brain has one desire and one desire only: to get energy. And if we don't recognize that we can support it to feel safe and not have to go after the fight or flight stress response in order to get that energy, we can start to change that relationship in the most powerful way, right? The other mechanism of that, you think in terms of, okay, well, if the brain just wants energy and adrenaline is its number one source of energy, the hormone from our stress response. But another one that's right beside that is dopamine. And dopamine is known as the voltage of the brain. Well, what's dopamine associated with? It's pretty much associated with every habit that we use to escape our lives.
It's like associated with pleasure.
Right. It's the pleasure reward center of the brain, the neurotransmitter that gives you that sense of euphoria. And it comes from a lot of beautiful ways, but for the most part in modern society and the way the system is set up, that, well, where do we turn to first? Well, okay, so for kids, it's screens and it's social media and screens and sugar. Okay, well, now you have a brain as a child that's locked into, and if you have kids, anybody who has kids, your kids, that's all they want. They just want the screens and they want sugar. Not their fault, but they don't know how to teach the brain to let go of that. And then as you enter into adulthood, well, now you have drugs and alcohol, shopping, gambling, pornography. There's the list is endless of where your brain starts to turn to try and get more energy.
Right.
And so if we're always locked in those states, it's very difficult to be here right now, to be present. And so again, I guess the main point is to recognize that you can train your nervous system to teach your brain, your ego, to let go. You can do it without taking a lot of time out of your day. It's a matter of, okay, well, what do I bring into my life that's going to help cultivate this? Well, there's a very particular breath practice that does it, and nature does it. Every time you go out into nature, you feel it. I do a lot of grounding work. What's grounding? Well, it's getting barefoot on the ground or putting my hands on a tree. Multiple times a day, I am going out in my backyard and I'm just grounding. It's like, well, don't you need a fitness program and a diet? And it's like, yeah, good luck, because your brain's going to run amok with those things. All we're meant to do is connect holistically to our own state of presence. We can cultivate it ourselves, and we can use nature to start to deepen the relationship. And then you can be a really powerful part of the solution here with critical thought, which is what comes back as well.
Right. So why don't we, before we end this broadcast and stuff, let's talk about these 6 steps, because I gather that these 6 steps has a lot to do with what you just talked about, is about training yourself to become more ingrained with being present, with being present at all times, and actually training the mind to adapt to that instead of what it wants, but you focus your behavioral pattern, so to speak, to becoming more focused on being present instead of looking for outcomes or regressing by, staying stuck in the past and focusing your thoughts on that. So can you talk about this 6-step process?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is important to know too, as you go through this process. It's not hard. You're looking at 10 minutes a day of very committed, focused engagement of activity around this, but your brain is going to be pissed off. It is not going to be happy that you're doing this. So there's an element of this to know that as you commit to walking this kind of a path, you just have to know how your own biology is going to work, because you're going to be changing how your hormones function, and that's a beautiful thing, but your brain's not going to like it. And so that's where you have people like yourself, myself, where, you have to have community. You have to have a really beautiful, nourishing community community around you to do this kind of work. Because if you're always surrounded by your friends and family who are very triggered, this is a very hard thing to do, And so, but number one is the first step is being able to start to notice your own patterns, starting to kind of map out your own mind, 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay, so where do your thoughts like to go? Start to look at the themes of your life. Think about your health, your relationships, your finance, your career, and start to just recognize a few of the big patterns of where you're feeling disrupted. Okay, that's the first one. Then you want to start to work with those. Maybe pick one to start. So this is easier to start to notice the power of this. Okay, let's say it's relationships. Let's say you have friction with your main partner in life and you want it to feel more nourishing. Okay, in the moments of life now that you notice you're feeling a disruption, a reaction to that person, you're going to practice a breath practice. It's called heart flow. It takes 33 seconds to reset your own nervous system. Nobody ever told me this, but it's true. 33 seconds, we can reset our own nervous system to come back to that calm, rest, and digest state and get critical thought back online. It's this beautiful ability to tone your vagus nerve so that there's this what's called coherence. So it comes up the vagus nerve, tells the brain it's safe. The brain stops using your reactivity. Boom, you're now present. After you've started to train that in, what you can start to do now is step 3, which is you can start to play around with a fresh emotion, right? So if you have friction with your partner.
I have a quick question about the vagus.
Yeah, totally.
Is that through breathing?
So that's through breathing that you're learning to teach it to tone up in terms of creating coherence. Okay. There's other ways to work with your vagus nerve. For me, this was the one that just, from climbing, I realized, wow, there's something I'm doing in this moment that's bringing me back to a state of strength. And when I did all the research, I realized, wow, okay, so it's actually resetting my nervous system and it's allowing the vagus nerve to send a clean signal from my heart to my brain to tell my brain that it's safe, that there is no tiger to run away from here, like the olden days with the saber-toothed tiger, and I'm actually okay right now. And so through the breath, you're training it into a place of coherence. And it again, doesn't take a lot of time, but what it does give you access to now is to begin to play around with a fresh emotion, right? Because we know that if we have, for example, with our partner, if we're feeling agitated or frustrated or anxious, that has an emotional frequency. Well, now you've just reset it. Now you have space to choose how you want to feel. Oh, okay, I'm now going to stop and I'm going to do this breath practice and I'm going to feel the emotion of what I would like this to be instead. And I'm choosing to feel in love with this person, connected, feeling super nourished in this relationship now in this moment. This is the feeling I have. Great. That's the key step, because the next step then is to pay attention. This is step 5, is to pay attention. Pay attention to what's showing up around you, because you're going to begin to notice that you're manifesting that emotion back into your life again. It's not for us to figure out how, right? This is the need for an outcome to be a certain way. It's like, no, you can use the connection to how you want to feel in this relationship, but that's not what you might manifest. God, universe, quantum field, whatever we want to call it. It might have a different way of you getting it, but what you will get is the emotion again.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It's something that people that I congregate with at the BOCC talk a lot about in regards to being in the spirit of Christ, or some people call him Yahweh, Yeshua, but it's being in that state where you're operating in all of the fruits of the spirit.
Yeah.
You're operating in a place of love. You're operating in a place of compassion. You're operating in a place of not judging. Yeah. And it's so many different fruits of the spirit. But when you start operating and training yourself to be in that frequency, to be in that state of thought on a consistent basis, especially when something is coming and attacking you, or like you mentioned about family being triggers.
Yeah.
Being able to deal with that at that particular time when the trigger comes, and being able to overcome the trigger instead of the trigger overcoming you, it really puts you in a high state of being to where you're vibrating at such a high frequency that, and I had this happen to me yesterday. I was around this woman and I know her husband, or now I found out it's her ex-husband. These are people that I've hung out with on a regular basis. I haven't hung out with them for quite some time. But when I walked up to her and I, introduced myself saying, hey, I told her my name, and she's like, I didn't even recognize you. Part of the reason why she didn't recognize me is because I'm vibrating on a whole different frequency now from when they knew me.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's not like not like I had a makeover, right? It's like I didn't change my body, I didn't get any bigger or smaller to see a significant difference in how I look as a person. But energetically, I'm different. And that emanates a field of, or your auric field, to where people are going to perceive it as something different, where she didn't even recognize me because the energetic field that I was vibrating in at the time that I knew this woman is light years different than how I am now. So,
right. That's huge.
It is.
Right. Because that puts, essentially, when you do this work, it's the most powerful act of self-love, but the self-love becomes this beautiful energy that you now have an overflow to give others, where you're not giving yourself up to serve anybody else. It's your energy. This is all about this idea of co-regulation. You learn to regulate your own response to life's stressors and put yourself in that vibration of your own abundance. You now have an overflow available for others, and your co-regulation of them. So their stress response is always being triggered from their lives, but you have this space for them to feel safe to come into. That's an amazing place to live life from.
Right.
And that's something we can optimize. Like we're talking about these steps, you can optimize that place, but it does take some effort because the system isn't set up for us to know it as a place to where we get to live from. And your brain doesn't want you to experience it at the level that we can have it, because of your brain being that survival organ wants you stuck in the thoughts and in all the stories that your thoughts are, in order to keep you stuck in that reactivity. But the beauty of it is it's not that difficult to begin to create this shift. It doesn't require a whole lifestyle overhaul and the fitness programs and the diets that we talk about and the hours of meditation. It just requires our commitment to working with our own mind in the moments it's trying to get us to be reactive. Those are the training moments. Those are the moments to teach it to let go and to feel nourished and to come back to this moment right now as your power source. And I love that you and your community, obviously, this is a big part of your focus and your energy. And the fact that I'm here is, it's a beautiful manifestation.
Now, did you get to number 6?
So number 6 is to optimize. All right. So This is the idea, again, once you have the foundation set and you're vibing in that beautiful space of feeling more present, and which that is the place of fulfillment. That is the place of purpose. This whole idea of, I got to figure out my purpose. And it all comes from presence.
Right.
Now we just want to optimize that space. And that's, again, this idea of looking at all these areas of our wellness, the sleep and nutrition and movement. After we've got those 5 steps in place, now you have extra capacity to start to look at your nutrition in a way where it won't be a source of stress. You can actually learn about nutrition in a way where it's going to fuel you up and fuel your presence even more. Same with your sleep. How do you do some really beautiful things around what is your circadian rhythm, your 24-hour light cycle, which is something that, again, a cultural norm, thinking it's normal for us to be exposed to so much artificial light. We don't realize how much that diminishes our ability to be present and how much more reactive we are because we have artificial light everywhere. It's not that we need to turn it all off, but we can learn to mitigate that, because artificial light is a big impactor on our quality of sleep, but also our ability to be present.
Absolutely. And that's something I always have to remember, to turn the TV off, because the TV provides a lot of not just artificial light, but a lot of EMF,
Yeah, totally.
Electromagnetic frequencies that interrupt the REM sleep along with the Wi-Fi and everything else.
Yeah, right. And our phones are the same thing, access to the phones right beside our... so it's like, how do you set up your bedroom so it's not an entertainment center, but more of a sleep sanctuary? And, I walk through my clients in terms of, once they get to this place, you just, it's learning some really easy things you can add in that will help support your ability to feel even that much better. And, that's, I think, one myth around health is that it has to be arduous and take lots of time. And, it doesn't if we have the right method around us. And yeah, so I'm happy, like the 6 steps, like I mentioned, if it resonates with anybody, I have it all outlined for anybody who wants access to it. Happy to share that with them.
Absolutely. And before we end this, I'm going to ask you a question, but it's from an ancient script. And I want you to give me your answer to when I say this to you, what this means to you. Because you talked about self-love. And I think self-love in today's society is it's so misguided by these so-called gurus and people online. It's like, you see the guy pull out the Lamborghini. And he's like, hey, you want to live a life like this? Hit me up. And for $19.99, I'm going to change your life so you can live like this. And it's like, no, man. That's why when it comes to Andrew Tate, I tell people, Andrew Tate is not that special in the way he's influenced. He's actually more of a detriment to people because they say that he's freeing young men to have a more fulfilling life. But in actuality, he's really not doing that. He's giving you the ego in a very attractive way. That makes sense. A lot of things he says make sense, but the nucleus of it all is very misleading. And what I try to do here is, or I shouldn't even say try because there's no such thing as try. What I do here is I let, especially young men and women, know that when you talked about the self-love, and you explained it so well when you were talking about how when you're cooking and those amount of hours that you're spending, then being present and how fulfilling that is, where you're not focused on something else. The whole independent self-love doctrine that's being taught is not about that. It's about being in control. And the script I want to say to you, because this is something I discovered that has brought me to levels of fulfillment when it comes to self-love. But self-love is not really the love that you're constantly giving to yourself, but it's the love that you get by utilizing the love that's already ingrained in you that you were born with. So this is what I'm going to say to you. And I'm pretty sure you've heard it before. And the first person I heard say this was Wayne Dyer. And it's when you seek happiness for yourself, it eludes you. When you seek happiness for others, you find it in yourself. What do you think about that statement? And that's ancient. That's ancient. Yeah. Ancient. We're talking about thousands of years that was written.
Yeah. I've chased this idea of fulfillment, as a mind construct. But I do know in terms of my own feeling experience of fulfillment, the most powerful connection to that energy is when I'm in the presence of another and I'm able to actually hear them. And in order for me to actually hear them, I'm not stuck in my own mind's desire for certain outcomes, which is a lot of what society teaches us is how can you leverage this person? How can you get something out of this person? And in my own exploration of getting out of my own head, I've manifested the ability to hold space with others in a way where I feel so fulfilled when I'm with them in their expression of whatever it is that's coming up for them. And I'm just there without having to have anything happen other than just be there with them. There's a feeling that comes that it's so fulfilling that I recognize that there's something so real and so, the truth of that, it's a manifestation that I'm recognizing continues to come up for me the more I honor getting out of my own way. And I really love that.
That's great to hear because, a lot of people, and I've had a lot of guests say, it's nice to be on a podcast where I'm not being interrupted all the time. I've had people tell me that. And when I talk to people on the phone, I stay quiet to where they have to ask me if I'm still there. But there is something really great when you can actually just allow a person to speak and just listen and what that can do for someone else, because we live in a society where most people are not listening. And if they are, they're always interjecting, and it causes for disruption, and it doesn't lead to a fulfilling present moment because one or the other is not allowed to be present because of the other person. So it's beautiful when you're congregating with people that can really listen and be present and listening to what is being expressed at that current time or that specific time or that present time.
Yeah, so and it's not perfect. It's not maybe not necessarily easy, but if we're locked in a need to have our own needs met in some way, it's very difficult to be present with another human being. Absolutely. And it takes practice.
Yeah. That's why narcissism, I talk about narcissism all the time. I have a narcissism series because it's a big thing right now. Narcissistic behavior is it's a problem. But it's just a reflection of where we're at as a society too. Yeah. With that whole leveraging thing that you were talking about. I mean, that's what people do. They want to see what they can get out of you. If they feel like they can't get anything out of you, there is no use for you. Yeah. And we have to stop being like that.
Well, and there's a whole attention economy too, which is such a big problem for narcissists. It's, everything's about gathering more attention in terms of like social media and
The validation is real. Yeah.
It's a tricky place to live life from, but yeah, no.
Absolutely.
Hey, listen, I really, I appreciate you and I appreciate what you're up to. And, I appreciate getting to share some time with you and, look forward to growing our relationship and, and appreciate your community.
Yes. Thank you, Adam. And any final comments before you go?
No, I'm not really active on social media a whole lot. I again, this is the idea.
That's not a bad thing.
No,
because I haven't really been either.
Be as present as I can be, and if this resonates with anybody, I'm happy to support with those 6 steps, and look forward to seeing what comes next. Yeah,
so we're gonna have on the website, it's the training.clearimpact.io, right? /roadmap. Is there any other website?
Yeah, you can go right to the website, which might be the easiest, which is clearimpact.io. And it's right on the top there. You'll see it when you pop on that website, clearimpact.io.
Okay. So I'll make it to where it's just clearimpact.io and I'll take out the /roadmap. But the /roadmap is the 6th step, right? Unleash your energy roadmap. Okay.
Yeah, that'll get you right there.
I'll put both of them in.
Yeah,
all right. So any final comments before you go?
No, it's great. Yeah. I look forward to what's next, keeping it, no expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely have you come back on the show. I'll have you come back on for season 6 because we're ending up season 5 and I'm going to take some time out before I put season 6.
Yeah, good for you.
So thank you for coming on to the show. Greatly appreciate your time, your energy, and your presence, first and foremost. So brothers and sisters, Adam Hart are you still in Toronto?
I am in Squamish, BC.
Okay.
Close
Squamish,
to Vancouver,
BC.
British Columbia.
Okay. So we have a lot of Canadian listeners. I know they'll appreciate when I bring on my Canadian guests.
Right on.
All right, Adam. Well, have a good day. And I'll talk to you soon. And I'll be giving you your review sometime today.
Right on. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye. All right, brothers and sisters, that was Adam Hart on the Network of Awareness. And, so many gems was given on this broadcast today in regards to just being present, right? Being present and having that self-love is so important. So with that being said, let's play some music to kind of end the broadcast. And then, I'll come right back on real quick and give my farewell slogan speech like I normally do. But this particular episode, putting nature back in human nature, right? And we really got to be putting a lot of energy back into what matters, which is that self-love, instead of expecting an outcome based on societal norms, based on what somebody else thinks we should be doing, and doing what's right for us, and freeing ourselves from the chains of that enslavement, right? The enslavement of the mind when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to depression, when it comes to having to always feel like we got to be at a certain place or a certain state at a certain time. And instead allowing the spirit to be free. Because the more we come back to simplicity in life, the closer we get to the understanding of the Most High and that which we come from, and that, being the creation from the Creator. So let's play a quick song, and song I'm going to play real quick just to give some praises to the Most High. It's one of my favorite songs, and it's Praise the Most High by Brother Demon Slayer, and really like this song. So let's play it, and I'll be right back.
Comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. There comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. Don't cross that line, or we gotta let the sword fly. It comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. It comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. So don't cross that line, we gotta let the sword fly. All praises to the Most High. First off, I just want to say that every single day a blessing, so I'm really stepping, trying to find my way back. Counted the cost, repented of flaws, I'm trying to live. Yeah, the kingdom of heaven abroad. Have hope in my dreams, I pray I don't fall. I pray for the ones who is lost. I'm feeling the sorrow of times. I'm looking on up in the sky. I'm seeing a lot of the signs. It's either repent or you die. Cannot be walking two sides. Choose to stay who you ride for. Cemented in faith till I die. You don't really wanna fall off. Keep your head up. Keep my sword with me with armor. We won't let up. Sharpen up your brothers, others who we care for. Always shine the light for the Most High in Christ. It comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. It comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. Don't cross that line or we gotta let the sword fly. It comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. It comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. So don't cross that line when we gotta let the sword fly.
I wonder why we was created, but later I got my answers. Was searching scriptures daily, trying to get rid of this cancerous spirit. Bearing witness, I live these holy commandments. Repent, or you gon' perish. Destruction is way too scary. Every day I wake, I give all praises to the Most High. Living in this lie, learn the truth, or you gon' die. Ain't much time left, the Savior coming, looking to the sky. It ain't no disguise, gotta armor up my own mind. Gotta get it, spirit dripping, these gifts don't got no limits. I'm just wishing I could live in that holy kingdom with them, focused on the mission. Eyes locked in tunnel vision, no paganism. We truly follow Christ, that real Christian.
It comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. It comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. Don't cross that line or we gotta let the sword fly. It comes a time when we gotta praise the Most High. It comes a time when we repent in the Lord's eyes. Been traumatized, we just weep until we sore eyes. So don't cross that line, we gotta let the sword fly.
All praise to the Most High. Repent and perish.
Peace, brother. I don't have a lot of time, Take. They got the dogs on me. You know, they really trying to get me to take this science appliance, brother. And you know I'm not doing that, man.
Oh, where you at?
Not doing it. I'm in an undisclosed location right now. Up in the nature spot near that cabin I used to go to. But they got the dogs tracking me. They got the satellites. So they eventually gonna get here. I got it barricaded, you know what I'm saying? Because the only way I'm taking that jab is if I'm in a bag, brother. So Take, I just want to tell you this before anything else happens, and I want to get this out to you and let you know. Alright, brother, Take, you're at the door. I gotta tell you, just listen, brother, just listen. Now it's time to get out your own way. Allow Yahweh, today is your day to amaze in many ways. Cause it's just another phase in this infinite space where y'all be giving us grace. I'm working the race with diligent praise, unwavering faith. I'll be damned if I stray from y'all's will and embrace. Man sealed his fate with his ignorant ways. The world is disgraced, vibration has raised at a very fast pace. I'm present today in high frequency waves. No more being enslaved, all praise to Yahweh. A Hebrew warrior from the land of the brave. From the cradle to the grave to my very last day. Send a serpent to his cave, God favored my way. Never fearful or timid, it was written and given. No religion, division can stop a messenger that's fulfilling his mission.
They only get worse before they get better. But the storm ain't meant to last forever. Even when the light is dim, the sun finds a way to shine again. Things are getting ugly, things are getting cold, but I know it's best to stay in my zone. And I can't stop now, I can't stop now.
Hey, I can't stop and won't stop, I gotta keep propelling. Final destination is a room in the heavens. Diligence and militant, his will is my medicine. I can live without a half, but his love is my everything. COVID is on the road, got the world on its toes. So many sheep with their eyes closed.
Hey, sir, would you like to take the jab?
Man, kiss my ass, stop living by what the news told you. You got injustice, brutality saturating the streets. Blood spilling for no reason, thanks to the police. Meanwhile, syringes are being taken with speed. Can't do it, you ain't sticking no vaccination to me. Despite all the chaos, I still manage to stay on the right path. Gotta keep my focus and my faith strong.
All day long.
Let spiritual music play on. All the honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh.
Things only get worse before they get better. But the storm ain't meant to last forever. Even when the light is dim, the sun finds a way to shine again. Things are getting ugly, things are getting cold, but I know it's best to stay in my zone. And I can't stop now, I can't stop now.
Can't stop, I won't stop. 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 Can't stop, I won't stop.
Thirst is real. You hear me? The thirst is real. Better make sure to get hydrated right. Whoa! Y'all zoom. I'm a baller. Shot call. Knowing that I go harder. And a father. All I do is drink coconut water. I'm a baller. Every time I take a sip, I wanna move my hip, come on, move my shoulders and jig, then take another swig. I needed a refill. Come on. So I headed to the kitchen. Then I gave the juice a boost. With some limes and lemons. Took a walk to the mall. Coconut water in my hand. Everyone who seen me, they all yelled, "You're the man." Then a woman pulled up. She took my coconut water with the quickness. Took a sip, then she moaned, "It's delicious." Then she gave me the digits. I'm a baller. Shot call. Knowing that I go harder. Need her mom and a father. All I do is drink coconut water. I'm a baller. Shot call. Knowing that I go harder. Need her mom and a father. All I do is drink coconut water. I love coconut water. Do you love coconut water? Yes, I'm trying to get a sponsor. The way I roll, it would be an honor. I called little shorty who would put me over. She answered and said, "What's up?" What it do? I replied and said, "Nothing much. Coconut water in my cup." Then she said, "Come over. You can relax. Take a breather." I said, "I don't know. I just put another cup in the freezer." But I did, then I ran into her father. He looked at me like, "How you know my daughter?" Then he started to cry and said, "Thank God you love coconut water." I'm a baller. Shot call. Knowing that I go harder. Need her mom and a father. All I do is drink coconut water. I'm a baller. Shot call. Knowing that I go harder. Need her mom and a father. All I do is drink coconut water. Shake that, work that, better twerk that. Shake that, work that, better twerk that. Shake that, work that, better twerk that. I ain't talking about your ass, I'm talking about the water. I ain't talking about your ass, I'm talking about the water. I ain't talking about your ass, I'm talking about the water. I ain't talking about your ass, I'm talking about the water. Serve chill, don't spill, you gotta think smarter. Zone.
Yes. That's a beat by Brother Demon Slayer that I'm about to terrorize in a little while. Got a lot of new music coming out. Just haven't had the time to finalize it. But brothers and sisters, we got a lot of new music coming out. Just be patient. And I guarantee it's going to be worth the wait. Especially, the music that I'm going to be putting out. Because I haven't put out a song in quite some time. So it's about time that I put out several songs that brothers and sisters have been waiting for me to put together and put out. So definitely going to be doing that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I hope that this particular episode on putting nature back into human nature really gave you great edification, great substance to meditate on. So with that being said, we're closing near. This is episode 93 of season 5, Great Understandings. And like I said, we're going to take a while before we put out season 6. So in the interim, I'm just going to be putting out episodes that are going to be considered bonus episodes in between season 5 and season 6. From the ending of season 5 to the beginning of season 6, it's going to be a lot of bonus episodes. Go to the website. If you haven't subscribe to the website with your email, brothers and sisters. Please do it. If you are not following me on Spreaker, go to Spreaker.com, follow Network of Awareness, and you'll be following all the different podcasts on there. It's a little yellow button right when you go there, and it'll say press the button for follow me on there. And that way you'll have updates and access to whenever a live broadcast like this one comes up that you can listen to on Audible, okay? Because not all the time when I do a live episode, it's going to be on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, okay? So with that being said, when you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning, and don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up the tunnel and find your way through the darkness. This is Or the Information. Say peace, love, and light, and all praises to the Most High in Christ. Bless you, brothers and sisters. Always and forever, forever favors. Shalom.